Hello, BookTube. I've got a grim and foreboding Friday poem for you, the perfect thing to send you off into a happy, carefree weekend. It's from 1924, and it's by John Crow Ransom, and it's called Vaunting Oak. And that's just what it's about, just so you know. So we're on the same page. It's about a giant oak tree. He is a tower unleaning, but how will he not break if heaven assault him with full wind and sleet, and what uproar tall trees concumbent make? More than 100 years, more than 100 feet, naked he rears against the cold skies eruptive. Only his temporal twigs are unsure of seat, and the frail leaves of a season, which are susceptive to the mad humors of wind, and turn and flee in panic round the stem on which they are captive. Now a certain heart, too young and mortally linked with an unbeliever of bitter blood, observed, as an eminent witness of life, the tree, and exulted, wrapped in a fantasy of good. And this is the young person speaking. Be the great oak for its long winterings our love's symbol, better than the summer's brood. Then the venerable oak, delivered of his pangs, put forth profuse his green banners of peace, and testified to her with innumerable tongues. You can't really sense it all that well, but there are rhymes going on here of a kind, slant rhymes of a kind. There's pangs and tongues, good and brood, mortally and tree, susceptive and captive. Uh, and what but she fetched me up to the steep place where the oak vaunted, a flat where birdsong flew had to be traversed, and a quick populace of daisies and yellow kinds, and here she knew, who had been instructed of such mortality, better than to brag in this distraught purlieu. Above the little and their dusty tombs was he, standing sheer on a hill, not much soiled over by knobs and broken boughs of an old tree. And she murmured, "Established, you see him there forever." But that her pitiful error be undone, I knocked on his house, loudly, a sorrowing lover, and drew forth, like a funeral, a hollow tone. The old gentleman, I grieved, holds gallantly, but before our joy shall have lapsed even, will be gone. I knocked more sternly, and his dolorous cry boomed till its loud reverberance outsounded the singing of bees, or the coward birds that fly overwhere with their songs when summer is sped, and if they stayed would perish miserably, or the tears of a girl remembering her dread. And that the gist of the poem, the action of the poem, is that two young lovers go up to an ancient oak tree, and one of them says, "This will be the symbol of our love. It is everlasting. It has been around forever. It has weathered every storm, every adversity." And the other, let's call him the narrator of the poem, and so let's call him the man, walks up to the oak and raps on the wood and hears that the thing is hollow, which means that it's essentially dead and that the next strong wind will blow it over. The next bad winter will rot it from the inside. And that's the lovely image that we're left with, the heartwarming image that John Crow Ransom wants to give you, is that the symbol of this pair's eternal love is rotted on the inside, hollow and ready to cave in. So there you go. Let that be a lesson to you. And I'm sure that poetry wonks. I'm not a poetry wonk. I'm just a poetry fan. But I'm sure there are poetry wonks who would go on and on about the kind of technical stuff that's going on in this poem. There's quite a bit of it. And believe you me, if you have perused your way through the Princeton Guide to Poetry and Poetics, you know that poetry wonks have a name for everything. As the old saying goes, the French have a word for everything. They have a name for every single thing that John Crow Ransom is doing in this poem. But I like it anyway. It's intentionally stuffy and pretentious. It's intentionally Niles Crane type poetry. There's also, I mean, what is that? Concumbent? Nobody uses the word concumbent. And purlieu, in the context of this poem, makes you just go, "Oh, that's a fancy word." This is 1924, so it's still a good 10, 15 years away from poets deciding that they wanted to use obscure or off-putting words intentionally. I'm pretty sure that John Crow Ransom actually talked and wrote this way. But it gives you a little preview of what that era will be like, where all of a sudden inscrutability, incomprehensibility will be a sign that you are a poet, which spelled the end of poetry as a popular genre, and you could have seen that coming. a mile away. There might even have been critics who said, if this is what poetry tries to do, if this is what it remakes itself as, well, that it might still happen. You might still get a publishing house that's flush enough to publish a volume of this stuff, but no one will talk about it. No one will read it for fun. And that turned out to happen. But it hasn't happened here yet. In 1924, it still wasn't true. There is an action, a conceit, a main storyline, if you want to call it that, here in this poem, that could have been appreciated by John Donne. It's a neat little thing. The outward symbol of monstrously strong endurance is actually rotten on the inside and is deceitful in that way. Anyway, there you go. So Vaunting Oak by John Crow Ransom, a little doom and gloom grimness to start off your weekend. But maybe we'll read something happy tomorrow. Thank you, BookTube.